All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Manny Super Civic Cyber Conversations. My name is Jupiter. Many of you guys may know who I am. Many of you guys probably don't know who I am. But I am the events manager at Manny's. And, on a regular day, I am at Manny's taking care of events, making sure they're executed properly. I make sure I take them down and so on and so forth. So a lot of you may know me that way. But now here we are. We are here to have a wonderful conversation today about managing stress and promoting wellness with Dr. Michael Stanton, he's right next to me. I don't know what. He's here to give us a few tips and some advice as to what we can do to accomplish such things. But before that, I want to do a quick little plug. My operator, he put in a donation link in the Q&A portion, and if you want to help us contribute to our mission of civic engagement during this difficult time, please click on the link and donate to Manny so we can continue this wonderful mission. So Michael, Dr. Stanton, how are you today?
Good. How are you? Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Of course. We were having a little during our pre-call. Michael had planned a wonderful event at Manny's called "The Future of Tech is Black," but we decided to shift gears a little bit, and here we are to discuss managing stress and promoting wellness. So that begs the question. Michael, how do you manage stress? Because we all do it differently, right?
Yeah, definitely. Managing stress is going to be individual for a lot of people, but I'd say a common factor is taking care of your body and your mind, and I'm a health psychologist, which means I work on the intersection between psychology and medicine. And so it's really important to me to talk about the fact that a healthy body is a healthy mind and vice versa. So, it involves, healthy body and healthy mind. If I can get into specifics, or I'm not sure if you wanted.
No, I mean, that's definitely a great start. So, the things that I do when I am feeling stressful, I like to work out at times. I like to read.
Mm-hmm.
I am a shopaholic. I like to shop a lot and spend a lot of money when I am feeling anxious and stressed. That I've realized is not a good tendency. So it got me thinking, a lot of us cope in very different manner. But how can we differentiate between what is healthy and what is not healthy for us?
Oh, that's a really good question, especially looking in the news about how alcohol sales have gone through the roof, right? And okay, not quite there yet. Just got the water, but no, I think it's a good question. I think that alcohol in moderation can be very healthy, but again, just to go back to the healthy body part, you want to make sure that before you deal with it with any of the rest of those, that you are, like you said, exercising regularly. Another thing to keep in mind is that you're sleeping well, that you're eating a healthy diet with fruits and vegetables. I know I saw Michael Pollan on this podcast, and he was also, of course, he's famous for talking about healthy eating, and also breathing, mindfulness, making sure you're breathing and having some quiet time. Those are, I'd say in terms of physical health, those are really important. there is a temptation to drink a little bit more than you normally do. And I think, I would just make sure that you get those healthier things in first is what I would say. That's really important.
Definitely. And one of the things that I've been practicing more now that I find myself, well, I'm sure all of us find ourselves and the confines of our homes 24/7 for weeks on end. I've begun to start practicing mindfulness just because times you might lose track of your day, you might lose track of your purpose for the day. So practicing mindfulness is something that I've definitely learned to love nowadays.
Nice.
Just because, as I mentioned, it's quite hard to. I mean, it's quite easy to feel distraught or feel not focused or feel unmotivated.
Right.
So I also wanted to ask, moving forward, what do you think we should learn from a time like this? What are the mechanisms that we should be instilling in ourselves for when there is no, when we're no longer in shelter in place? What is something that we should take away from the time that we have now to ourselves?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I just wanted to make sure. Can you see me? Is the connection okay on my end?
I can see you. Can you see me?
Yes. It was a little choppy. It might have.
Yeah, my operator just texted me. I was a little off, but I'm back. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. I would say I was actually talking recently on another show about resilience and about how, one thing to think about is that we are the descendants of people who endured a lot of challenges and difficulties through their lives. Immigration, how challenging that could be, slavery, the potato famine, and I think that in many ways, we have so much strength in our past and in our genes, to confront these challenges. And actually, as a side note, there is research that shows that in general, people who it takes challenges to actually develop a good resilience. So, you need to have to work on, for example, you have to take quizzes in order to do really well on the test, and in the same way, you have to endure little challenges so that you're resilient to the futures that, the challenges that lay ahead. So I think, obviously, this is a really challenging time for a lot of people. People are going through all kinds of, difficulties with jobs and family and uncertainty. But I think that if you can, that at the same time, like our ancestors, there's a lot for us to gain from this process.
Definitely. And yeah, you're very right. I was thinking to myself the other day that what we're going through, it definitely involves a lot of moving parts, a lot of elements, and one of those is definitely the psychological impact that we're going to feel for months and years to come. So
for sure.
As you just mentioned right now, that also before this happened, we learned from our ancestors and from history, of course. A lot of tragic and shocking things have happened, which have shaped the way that we think, have shaped the way that we cope, and have shaped the way that we have created mechanisms to protect ourselves. So
For sure. Yeah. I was actually reminded, just as a side note, I have a portrait of Frida Kahlo behind me.
Oh,
And Frida, and Frida was amazing in the sense that she, I don't know if you know this, the story, but she was injured really gravely as a child, and she attributed partly her amazing art to having gone through that trauma. She said, why do you need feet when you need wings to fly? She was bedridden and yet making this beautiful art. And so, there is the potential within us to create beauty as well from challenging difficulties.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very good point that I would like to touch on next. But before, I want to remind folks that in about 9 more minutes, we're going to be taking Q&A questions. So if you think of a question that you would like to ask Dr. Stanton, make sure that you go to the Q&A portion, submit your question, and we'll be answering the questions the last 10 minutes of the conversation. So going to the point that I just mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, I had this conversation with Deborah Walker, who is this local artist in San Francisco. And one of the things that I asked her was, how is this pandemic going to change the way that we express ourselves in art? And now that you mentioned, this bit about Frida, and also tying it back to, lately I've been feeling very uninspired and not creative. And most of the times, feeling creative and feeling inspired has been what has kept me energized, what has kept me alive. So in regards to, how do we incentivize our creativity, and how do we push ourselves to create something beautiful, as you just mentioned, out of a situation that might seem quite grim?
Yeah, I guess it reminds me of the fact that when they look at, there's an amazing chart that was published in a book, and if you look on, you can Google it, through Huffington Post has a post on it, and it was about how amazing artists and writers and how they spent their days, and it has hour by hour detail. And one thing that blew me away was just how much of the time they spent in silence or just a quiet walking. And so I think that when we're caught up with the news and constantly following every statistic that comes out or press conference, I think that can be really challenging for us. I know we feel like we're doing something that's educating ourselves, but it actually, the research shows that, for example, for 9/11, that too much news and following the news too much actually led people to be more depressed, actually. And at some point you have enough news and you're just sort of, it's not really helping your mood and your well-being. And so instead of, constantly following the news or screens, you might want to set times to limit news and social media and just be quiet, go for a quiet walk, like, famous like Victor Hugo and Maya Angelou and amazing artists who, like I said, spent much of their day just quietly going for a walk on the beach or drawing, and there's also evidence and research out of Stanford, where I was for a while, some of my colleagues, and they found that it's actually in quiet times that people are creative, right? Quiet, mindful times.
Michael, can you walk me through a regular day in your life, from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep? What is your routine like?
Well, I'm not going to say that my routine is necessarily the best, because just because we study it, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily practicing it the best. But I can give you my ideal day, on my ideal day, I make sure I get enough sleep, right? And I have trouble exercising early. I like to exercise later in the day, but I try to wake up. I'm very lucky. My amazing partner makes delicious, healthy food like oatmeal with fruit, something like I said, whole grains, whole fruits. And on the weekends and during the day, I try to do a quick mindfulness, either a 5-minute if it's quick, or actually I do mindfulness and meditation with all of my classes that I teach. And that's how I start class. And on my own, I'll do 15 minutes. I try to keep up with the news, but I try not to spend too much time following every little change. And towards the end of the day, I like to go for a run or at least a walk, and try to get to sleep on time so that I can do it again the next day. And like I said, I try to keep the meals in whole grains, fruits and vegetables, and of course connecting with people, right? Doing the best I can to connect with people, and trying to connect with people who need it most, if possible. I have some friends who don't live with anyone, or there are elders in our community too who appreciate some social contact.
Definitely. You mentioned that you do some exercises with your class. When did you begin to do that? And is it something that your students appreciate, just to sort of have a little check-in before starting class or before getting into the mindset of having to learn?
I was really surprised because my students, the average student had really never done mindfulness or meditation. And so I was a little hesitant to start doing that. But once I started doing it, I have these weekly journals that they write to me and to tell me what they think of the class. And they all, across the board, all of them said, whatever you do, don't stop doing the mindfulness at the beginning of class. And so, yeah, so I do it. I do it every day before class, and it's great. It's really nice because, like I mentioned, it lets you wake up a little bit, clear your mind, and just bring a little peace, to your day.
Definitely. As a student myself, I've realized that as I've gotten older and my life has become a little bit more chaotic, I find myself that I can't learn when I am frazzled or I am flustered. And a lot of my classmates feel the same way. However, we fail to realize that we should take steps and precautions to make sure that we don't feel that way, especially when we're learning. So it's great that you do that. Some of my professors do that as well, and it's honestly
nice.
And it sort of brings the class together, and we breathe together as a whole, as one, which is great. And I have to ask, are you doing like online classes now?
Yeah. So everything has really changed to online, and so I'm doing meetings online and seeing classes online. I know that's another challenge, right, that people are dealing with is they used to be in person, and now everything is online. And so, yeah, that can be challenging for sure.
Well, what I was trying to get at is, do you still continue that, that same tradition of checking in with your students, taking, some breathing together? Is that something that you still uphold?
Yeah.
Online classes?
I do. I pull up just the YouTube sound of a Zen bell ringing, and I just start it like that and lead my own meditations. I used to do it with veterans at the Stanford and the VA hospital, and again, they it was they loved it too. And so, yeah, I do the same type of thing.
Definitely. What sounds do you like to listen to? I like to listen to whale sounds. I feel like that center me and bring me together.
You say whale sounds?
Yeah, whale sounds, or like
oh wow,
or like rain. I think it's quite relaxing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. For those of you that want a little plug on YouTube, there's like hours and hours and hours of like whale sounds. In case you want to check it out. It's really interesting.
Wow. Yeah, no, I guess I like the guided. I think one way that for people who haven't really experienced mindfulness, it sometimes is a little overwhelming to just have the silence. And so I recommend a guided visualization where maybe it's just sort of the audio of a script talking about being at the beach and what the beach sounds like and feels like and the waves. And so that's usually what I recommend to start.
I love that. Wow. It seems like we have much more in common than I assumed. Wow. So just as a reminder, folks, we are 9 minutes away from concluding. So if you have a question, feel free to go into the Q&A portion and submit the question. It can be anything. It can be whether you want to know some techniques or, you know, some tips on how to practice mindfulness or to, you know, reduce your stress, or what the future will look like for all of us. Because, you know, it seems like, as you mentioned, Michael, it seems like we're going to have to continue practicing social distancing. It seems like we're not going to be shaking people's hands in the near future, not anytime soon. So how is it that we you know, how is it that we keep each other sane without actually having to engage in physical touch? I love a good hug. It calms me and it soothes me and it's great. So folks, those are a few examples of what you can ask Dr. Michael. But I wanted to ask, so I'm getting into mindfulness. Let's pretend. Okay. What are some tips that you can give me to practice, you know, to just get into it? Sometimes I don't like to be alone and it scares me, and silence is freaky. What are 3 steps on how to begin to practice mindfulness?
Well, I find it really helpful. There are some great apps out there. I might just refer you. Sorry, I was going to check. Oh, it looks like we have some questions. Yeah. Well, just really quick, I'll just to answer your question, Insight Timer is a great app that I recommend. It's free and you can do guided, or you can just do the bell. You can even choose exactly how long you have to do the meditation, like 5 minutes or 15. And it's a really great app. So I'd say start there.
Insight Timer, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now let's get to the Q&A questions, because they're really great. So Jackie Mahendra, she asks, what are ways to make sure you're getting enough sleep if you're waking up in the night? Great question.
Oh, that is a great question.
Yeah.
So sleep is really, it's important. Like I said, it's one of the most important things right now when you think about how important it is for your immune system. And it's also important for your mood in getting along with your housemates, whoever they may be. So I would say that if you, one thing that I think that I see a lot in my patients is that there's a lot of, like I said, screen time, or lights are on right before bed. And so you want to make sure that you turn off lights and screens at least an hour or two before bed. You also want to, if you're having trouble sleeping, avoid caffeine or exercising really vigorously before bed. You also, you can Google sleep hygiene, and there are some really common tips out there. I'd say the last thing is that if you get woken up in the middle of, or if you rather can't go to sleep, or if you feel like you're kind of tossing and turning, make sure you get up and leave the bed actually, and try to do something that is boring, and only get back into the bed when you're tired and ready to go to bed. Those are some tips that I give patients for good sleep.
Okay. How would you define boring? You just mentioned to do something boring. What is something that you think is boring that helps you do?
Well, so I say that on purpose because so again, if you're in bed like about 15 to 20 minutes and you're not asleep, then it's a good time to get up. And when I say boring, it's going to vary for different people. So for like I said, for my partner, she reading is boring and she can fall asleep. But for me, reading is really engaging. Yeah. And so I will stay up and just turn pages. So for me, it has to be something a lot more boring than that. Like, okay. I don't know, crossword puzzle or something.
We're all different. All right, so moving on to the next question from Amanda. She asked, what's a new practice you've been cultivating as a result of social distancing that you're committed to integrating into your life long term, even if / when things go back to normal? As we mentioned earlier today, social distancing is gonna be with us for a little while longer. So how is it that we cultivate this, new practice?
So just to go back to some of the tips that I'd mentioned before, I think that I've been really happy to eat really great food, thanks to my partner who really likes to cook. And I really, research shows that people tend to eat better when they're purchasing food and making their own food. And so that's one practice I definitely want to bring back into my life after we transition back from COVID-19. Eating fresh food, making healthy meals, and getting out for that required exercise after work hours. That's really important to me.
Definitely. Yeah, that seems like a very reasonable. You are what you eat, and if you eat healthy, you will remain healthy. Junk food will fluster you and it will not do the right things to your body, which is stay away from that. All right, so next question is from Felicia. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. I'm so sorry if I am not. But their question is, are there any apps in particular that you recommend for guided mindfulness meditation? Also, any tips, tricks for limiting news intake, general screen time? So you did mention, Michael, that Insider Time was one of the apps that you used to keep track of your mindfulness. So Felicia, make sure that you check out Insider Time and
Insight Timer is what it's called.
Sorry. Insight Timer.
Yeah, no, it's really good. That works really well. If people have a little, if they have some money and they're willing to put that towards their practice, then there's also Headspace, which some people find really useful. And if you're a frontline, if you're a healthcare worker at all, actually, you don't even need to be frontline. It's offered right now for free for anyone who's a healthcare worker. And I would say, yeah, just that you really don't need much, right? Once you learn how to relax and just follow your breath. I mean, that's the amazing thing about breathing, is that you always have something to follow for your meditation. We always have it, your breath. So it's pretty amazing. You actually don't need a whole lot of apps, unless the nice thing about Insight Timer is that it tracks every day that you do it. So you can kind of keep up with it,
Definitely. I will say that I use Headspace, and it's definitely an app that has really helped me.
Nice.
Me, Manny, and Ram and Sam also use it as well. So it's
Nice.
something we use to collectively stay on the focus and concentrated. So I highly recommend Headspace. There are different ways to try it. Different settings and different formats that you can use. So I highly recommend that. And now we have a final question from Lee. And this question is, what do I do if I wake up filled with existential dread about the country? You're not the only one, Lee. So Michael, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's definitely a tough time for everyone, right? I think a lot of people are struggling, and I want to recognize that. One thing to be aware of is that I hadn't mentioned that's also on the list that I recommend is once you've gone through these practices and tried to improve your exercise and sleep, eating healthy, breathing, watching your news and your screen time, if there's something in psychology that we call acceptance, and acceptance doesn't mean that that you're okay with whatever's happening. It doesn't mean that you agree with whatever's happening, but it's a term we use to say that I am making a choice to live with uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I think we're definitely in a time when we need to live with a certain amount of uncertainty. And so trying to cultivate that sense of acceptance and taking ownership of it, not feeling like you're a victim, but you're making a choice to accept that, can be very powerful for some people. And then I would say that if people are having particular challenges, for example, if they are engaging in maybe too much of a unhealthy behavior, strong emotions, or if they're noticing that their behaviors are interfering with relationships or with their work, then they might consider calling a hotline. There are free hotlines available. And then also, if they have insurance, then they can contact their insurance to see what counseling is provided through their insurance. So, it might be useful to actually contact a counselor, a professional, to help with that.
Definitely. And I very much agree about what you said about having a certain degree of uncertainty in your life. I am an individual that likes to find the silver lining in any situation that I find myself in. And although this situation that we are in is unprecedented, and a lot of folks are really suffering and they're really going through a rough time. Many of them have lost their jobs, have lost their homes, and they're on the brink of being out and on the street, unsafe. However, it's always important to make sure that we look ahead and we look forward. I do not believe that this is going to last forever. Nothing lasts forever. It's something that I tell my friends and all my colleagues. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing will. We won't. So this is my way.
Very Buddhist of you.
Yeah, this is my way of telling people,
everything is temporary.
Temporary. Our time here is very limited. And although right now it might seem like the world is falling apart and there's no way out of this, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe it. So I just want to make sure, Lee, it's always, I understand that we might really get into feeling very dreadful at this time. But as Dr. Stanton said, let's look ahead and let's look forward, and
and also think about our ancestors, right? And what they've had to overcome to bring us here. I think that's very hopeful as well. kind of channeling their power can be very powerful. It can be powerful for us.
Definitely. And Michael, before we conclude the conversation, any message that you would like to give to us that you would like us to carry until, you know, shelter in place is lifted, and until, you know, we no longer have to do social distancing? What is something that you want all of us to remember and take away from this incredible conversation that we just had with you?
Yeah, it's so great to be here, Jupiter. I would say that it's really one thing that I don't want to, I can't overstate enough is the importance of that social connection. And even though we have screens, you know, that separate us, there are still ways for us to connect with people in really powerful ways. And I would say we know from the research that the givers, when someone gives a gift, it's actually the giver that benefits even more in terms of their brain and the reward that they get. And so, you know, think about what you can do for others in this time, right? Both in donating your time and money, but also just being there for someone, right? Calling up someone that you maybe hadn't talked to in a while, checking in on someone who might be living alone. I mean, that can be powerful for both the giver and the receiver. And so I think it's a good time for us to think about how we are so connected. And yeah, I think that's what I would say.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Michael Stanton for being with us here today and for all the wonderful tips that you gave us. I definitely learned a lot of new things today that I am definitely going to try to instill into my behavior to make sure that I am keeping myself healthy and sane. And I am going to pass these tips on to my friends. But thank you so much. Thank you for your time once again. And friends,
thank you.
Of course, thank you. And as I mentioned, friends, in the chat box, you're going to find a donation link in case you want to donate to Manny's. It is a way of helping us continue these wonderful conversations and continue our mission of civic engagement. All right, Dr. Stanton, thank you so much. And I will see you soon in the real world, 6 feet apart, of course. And I look forward to that day.
Same here.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.